The wine was a deep, blood-red Cabernet, swirling in my glass. I watched it, letting the motion steady me against the swell of voices. Around the reclaimed oak table of the Bexley estate, the conversation was a symphony of arrogance, and I was the silent, dissonant note. "So, we're all in agreement," drawled Edward Bexley, my stepfather, his voice oiled with the confidence of old inherited money. "The acquisition of that waterfront parcel in Portland is non-negotiable. We'll gut the local ordinances. What are a few fishing shacks compared to a Bexley residence's tower?" Murmurs of assent mixed with the scent of truffle oil. Landon leaned forward, his Rolex glinting under the chandelier. "The environmental impact assessment is a joke. We've got the right people to make it disappear. A few donations and it's a green light." My mother, Celeste, sat at the foot of the table, a silent, beautiful ornament. She caught my eye for a fleeting second, her gaze a complex map of apology and warning, before looking down at her bone china plate. I, Elara Thorne, was the ghost at this feast. The daughter of my mother's first, unfortunate marriage to a quiet literature professor who had left me nothing but a love for Keats and a healthy suspicion of the ultra-wealthy. I was here out of a frayed sense of familial obligation, a biannual torture I inflicted upon myself. "And what of the housing project in Detroit?" my stepsister, Victoria, asked, her tone as sharp as her cheekbones. "The one in the Brewster Douglas footprint. The eviction notices are being contested. Some local lawyer is making noise about historical communities," Landon snorted. "Please, offer them double the market value." Which is, let's be honest, a pittance. If they refuse, we lean on the city. Code violations, rezoning, we have the tools. They'll fold. They always do. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I'd seen the photos of that neighborhood online. Vibrant murals, community gardens, generations of families. In their world, it was just a blip on a spreadsheet, a column to be cleared. I set my wine glass down. The crystal clink was soft, but it seemed to echo. "Double a pittance is still a pittance," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "Those people have lives there." Histories, a heavy silence descended. 8 pairs of Bexley eyes swiveled toward me, not with curiosity, but with the mild annoyance one reserves for a buzzing fly. Edward chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "Elara, sweetheart, sentimentality is a luxury for those who can afford it. We are in the business of building legacies, not preserving nostalgia." He said the last word as if it were a contagious disease. "It's not nostalgia," I pressed, a flicker of my father's stubbornness igniting in my chest. "It's justice. There has to be a line." Victoria's laugh was a tinkling, cruel bell. "A line." "Darling, the asterisk line is what we draw on the architectural plans. You wouldn't understand. You're still renting that charming little, what is it, studio in Brooklyn. Working for that nonprofit?" She made nonprofit sound like leper colony. Landon smirked. "Saving the world one grant proposal at a time. How's that working out?" Still taking the subway. The heat of humiliation crept up my neck. My work at the Community Arts Initiative was a source of pride for me. We funded murals, after-school programs, and theaters in underserved areas. To them, it was a hobby, a cute little rebellion before I came to my senses and asked for a real job at Bexley Global. "It's working out fine," I said, my jaw tight. "We actually help people, we don't erase them." Edward's patience, a thin veneer at the best of times, evaporated. He dabbed his mouth with a linen napkin, his eyes like chips of flint. "Elara, this is a boardroom discussion, not one of your university seminars. We are discussing real-world, billion-dollar strategies. Strategies that pay for this wine, this house, the very fabric of the life your mother enjoys." He paused, letting the weight of his generosity hang in the air. "If you cannot contribute constructively, perhaps it is best if you remain silent. Or better yet, excuse yourself. We have serious matters to conclude." The dismissal was absolute, a guillotine blade dropping. My mother flinched but said nothing. The message was clear, I was an outsider. A charity case tolerated for my mother's sake. My opinions, my values, my very existence at this table were an inconvenience to be managed, and then removed. I looked at their faces, a gallery of smug, unquestioning privilege. In that moment, something inside me didn't break, it crystallized. It turned from hurt and anger into something cold, hard, and brilliantly clear. I stood up. My chair didn't scrape, I lifted it silently. I didn't look at my mother. I didn't slam my napkin down. I simply turned and walked out of the dining room, my heels clicking a steady, deliberate rhythm on the herringbone marble floor. I heard Landon's stage whisper behind me. Dramatic exit. Must be that time of the month. The laughter that followed was the last Bexley sound I would ever hear as a supplicant. Back in my tiny, overpriced Brooklyn studio, surrounded by second-hand books and vibrant prints from local artists, the cold clarity remained. I was done. Done with their condescension. Done with their ethical vacuum masquerading as pragmatism. But a simple, clean break wasn't enough. Not after that eviscerating dismissal. They believed the world was a chessboard they owned. I needed to prove them wrong. I dug out an old key from a jewelry box, a tarnished thing on a simple loop. It was for a safety deposit box, the only thing of value my father had left me. He'd called it his box of whispers, and told me to open it when I felt the world had stopped listening. I'd never bothered. I assumed it held old love letters to my mother, maybe a first edition of something. The next morning, in the hushed, sanitized air of a Queen's bank vault, I opened it. There were no love letters. There was a slim, leather-bound journal and a single, sealed envelope. The journal was filled with my father's elegant script, not poetry, but lines of code, complex algorithms, and frantic. Brilliant notes about pattern recognition in decentralized markets and behavioral economic forecasting on a global scale. It was dense, bewildering. The envelope contained a single sheet of paper with a string of 12 words, a seed phrase, and a note. For my Elara, whose world will be louder and brighter than theirs. This is the key to a different kind of library. Use it to read the world. My father, the quiet literature professor, had been a clandestine quantitative genius. In the early Wild West days of cryptocurrency and algorithmic trading, he had built something, a predictive engine, a digital oracle. He'd kept it secret, wary of its power, and left its access to me. With the heart-thumping thrill of an archaeologist opening a tomb, I accessed the digital wallet linked to the seed phrase. The balance displayed made me physically stagger, my hand flying to my mouth. It wasn't just wealth. It was a staggering, nation-state level of wealth, all in various cryptocurrencies and digital assets. My father hadn't just dabbled. He had quietly, brilliantly mined a vein of pure potential at the dawn of a digital age. The money wasn't the weapon, though. It was the fuel. The weapon was his journal, his engine. With the help of a few fiercely loyal, brilliantly geeky friends from my nonprofit days, a coder named Anya and a financial savant named Leo, we deciphered it. We didn't just see the engine, we upgraded it. We taught it to understand not just market patterns, but social currents, political tides, the fragile ecosystems of reputation and influence that people like the Bexleys took for granted. We called our project Panops, and we began to watch. For months, we operated from a nondescript warehouse in Red Hook, our screens glowing with a constellation of data. We lived on coffee and a purpose so sharp it could cut a diamond. We watched Bexley Global. We mapped their assets, their debts, their shell companies, their secret deals, their political bribes dressed as donations. We saw the beautiful, rotten architecture of their empire. The plan wasn't a hostile takeover. It was a silent, surgical dismantling. Phase 1 was the short symphony. Using Panops, we identified the most over-leveraged, ethically dubious Bexley projects, the Portland waterfront, the Detroit land grab, and a toxic waste-dumping subsidiary in Texas. We took massive, decentralized short positions against their public stocks, timed to catastrophic news cycles we ourselves would engineer. Phase 2 was the Whisper Network. Anya, a digital ghost, created a web of anonymous leaks. Not crude data dumps, but elegant, narrative-driven releases to journalists, activists, and regulatory bodies. The compromised environmental report for Portland found its way to a fierce Pulitzer-winning reporter. The city council members on Bexley's payroll in Detroit received, at the same moment, encrypted messages detailing their dealings, with a simple note: resign within 48 hours. Or the world sees this. The lawyer fighting the evictions suddenly found her case bolstered by a flood of impeccably sourced documents from a concerned citizen. Phase 3, my favorite, was the poisoned petard. We used their own tactics. We created a dozen shell companies, funded by my digital inheritance, and began to buy up Bexley's staggering debt at a discount from jittery creditors. We became the ghost in their financial machinery. The collapse, when it came, was not a thunderclap but a cascade of dominoes, each fall more elegant and damning than the last. It started with the Portland Project. The expose led to injunctions, then federal investigations. Bexley Global stock dipped. Our short positions began to pay, then Detroit. The city council members resigned in a panicked scandal. The eviction case was thrown out. The project was dead. The stock dropped further. A major bank, spooked by the Whisper Network revelations about the Texas subsidiary, called in a line of credit. Bexley was suddenly liquidating assets at fire sale prices to cover debts. And who was there through our anonymous shell companies to buy them? We were. We bought the Portland waterfront, every single parcel, for pennies on the dollar. We bought the Detroit land and immediately placed it in a permanent community land trust. The financial news networks were hysterical. Bexley Global in freefall. Mysterious market forces target empire. Is this the end of a dynasty? I watched it all from my warehouse command center, now sipping tea, not cheap wine. I saw the panic in Edward Bexley's eyes during a frantic CNBC interview. I saw Landon, pale and drawn, leaving the courthouse. Victoria's Instagram, once a stream of private jets and designer labels, went dark. The final move was the debt. When Bexley Global was a gasping fish on the shore of bankruptcy, we revealed ourselves, not as Elara, but as Panops Holdings. We owned the majority of their debt. We effectively owned them. The meeting was held in a neutral law office in Midtown. I walked in alone, dressed in a simple, powerful black suit I'd bought off the rack. They were all there. Edward, aged a decade in 6 months. Landon, hollow-eyed. Victoria, trying and failing to project defiance. My mother, a portrait of devastated confusion. They didn't recognize me at first. The power had shifted, and it altered my silhouette. "Good afternoon," I said, my voice calm in the sterile room. "I am the principal of Panops Holdings." Edward's head snapped up. His eyes, bloodshot and desperate, widened in dawning, horrific recognition. "Elara. What is this? What kind of sick game?" "This isn't a game, Edward," I said, taking the seat at the head of the table. "This is a foreclosure." Landon shot to his feet. You did this." "You pathetic, jealous little." "Sit down, Landon," I said, without raising my voice, "or I will have security remove you. And then I will liquidate your personal trust fund, which I assure you I also own." He sank back as if physically struck. I laid out the terms. They were not negotiable. Bexley Global would be dissolved. Its non-toxic assets would be spun off into employee-owned cooperatives. Its illegal activities would be fully confessed to the authorities. The family's personal wealth, the mansions, the art, the offshore accounts Panops had meticulously traced, would be seized to pay fines and reparations to the communities they had damaged. "You're ruining us," Victoria whispered, tears of rage in her eyes. "No," I corrected her gently. "You built your world on sand. I'm just the tide. You cut me off at dinner for speaking of justice. So I bought your entire world to administer it. I saved my mother for last." I turned to her. The hurt in her eyes was profound. "Elara, why?" "We're family. You were my family," I said, the ghost of old pain flickering in my chest. "But you chose your seat at their table. You were silent when they cut me off. You traded your voice for their comfort. That comfort is now gone." I slid a single key across the polished table to her. "It's for a fully paid condo in Beacon. Small, but yours, free and clear. It's more than you gave my father, more than you gave me. It's the only lifeline you get." I stood to leave. Edward was a broken man, staring into the abyss. Landon was sobbing with impotent fury. Victoria was stone. "What will you do with it all?" my mother asked, her voice barely a breath. I paused at the door, the ghosts of Keats in my mind and my father's final note. "Use it to read the world." "I'm going to listen," I said. "And then I'm going to build something that doesn't require silencing anyone to exist." The warehouse in Red Hook is now the headquarters of the Thorne Foundation. The Portland waterfront is a public park and marine research center. The Detroit neighborhood is thriving, its housing secure, its community center funded in perpetuity. We don't make headlines, we build infrastructures of dignity. Sometimes, late at night, I pull up the old security feed from the Bexley dining room. I watch my younger self stand up and walk out. I watch the arrogance on their faces. I don't feel vindicated anymore. I feel a profound, weary sense of balance. They believed the world was a thing to be owned, a story they alone had the right to tell. I learned a different truth. The world is a story, yes. And sometimes, if you listen closely to the whispers of the silenced, you can learn how to buy the pen. Thanks for diving into that world of quiet revenge and reclaimed power with me. If this story of turning dismissal into destiny resonated with you, imagine what else is possible. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. The next chapter of someone's silent revolution is always just a click away. What would you build if you held the pen? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time.